There we go.
Yes, welcome, everybody to KVH County Public Hospital District Number 1, regular board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. If Andy, can you do a roll call for us?
Sure. Bob Davis.
Here.
Erica Libanow.
Here.
John Ward.
Here.
Terry Clark.
Here.
Scott Olander.
Present.
Terry Barr.
Here.
Vicky Machado. Here. Ron Erlacher.
Here.
Michelle Worrell. Here. Amanda Scott. Here. Tricia Sinek. Here. Yoni Olson. Here. Dr. O'Brien.
Here.
Dr. Martin.
Yep.
And then by Zoom, we have, looks like Rhonda Holden.
Here.
Jeff Yamada.
Here.
And Jason Adler.
Here. Welcome, everybody. We'll see Julie tonight. Congratulations. And then Matt is traveling, so we'll see him also. Appreciate everyone being here. And first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We have at least one change, which is we're going to push off the provider spotlight for tonight and put that on next month's agenda. Are there any other items that need to be added or deleted from the agenda?
I move to approve the amended agenda.
Motion by John,
And I second it.
second by Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the consent agenda. Any changes? Agenda? Motion by Erica,
I'll second.
second by John. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Public comment and announcements. Do we have any public comment and announcements? Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to item 5, reports and dashboards. We'll start with quality. Andy Wilson.
Brief. I comment on our clinical access hospital survey. I just think it's worth pointing out that there was one area of the 4 surveys that we did receive 0 findings, and I think we kind of failed to mention that until I went through their entire letter and packet with fine-tooth comb. We received a letter and the formal document that we received no findings for the focused COVID survey. So I think we should just say that, because I don't think we highlighted that enough. I may have put it on my wall that we just felt, that just felt really good after this really tough heat to see that we really are doing everything we can and should be doing for COVID response. We did submit our plan of corrections, and we have not heard yet if that's been accepted or if we'll need to amend those. And did submit some extension letters on some of the items that might need construction and a little bit of time for supplies to arrive.
Do they have a time frame to respond to your submission?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but they do. I thought they said within 2 weeks they should respond. It takes they did tell me it would take longer sometimes to respond to the extension letters. That's all I have, unless you have questions about dashboard.
Any other questions for Mandy? Mandy? CEO report, we can read through Julie's. The only thing, should mention like the campus improvement plan that she's been touring, trying to tweak to see if we can make things look a little bit better around the campus and plant some trees and stuff like that. So that would be great.
She does have a tendency to make people nervous when she shows up with the clipboard and the tape measure.
I think we all did a symbol when we were walking around.
Yeah.
There's some really easy things that can be done to really make it, clean it up a little bit. So look forward to that.
One thing that I've noticed is all the birch trees across the back side of the hospital, they all have this bark beetle going on, and the tops are dying. those trees, if they're pruned heavily, can come back to good health. But
Against the stream, is that what you're talking about?
No, on the south.
along the
Oh,
top,
okay, got it, yep.
yeah.
Okay.
I've seen a tree, had that, severely pruned, like 12 years ago, and now that's great.
Yeah.
I've had, all my roof trees are dead. Because I didn't do that.
You need board action to make that happen, or?
But she does have an item about a motion to accept parent low bid for the laboratory renovation and expansion project. You have stuff on that? Do you want to talk about that now or wait?
We could talk about it now if you like. We've got Ron and Ken with KVH here to talk about it.
Yeah, sure.
Ken wrote a letter.
Yeah, yeah.
Recommendation. That, well, is that correct, Mindy?
I bet you're fine.
Yeah. We'll kick it off, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So, last Friday, we received bids for the project. We received 3 bids. We opened them, read them aloud, went through them, and then reviewed the credentials related to them. And 2 of the bids, it turned out that they didn't actually have the qualifications that were stated in the specifications. So we're recommending that those 2 be dropped as non-responsive. And so that leaves the 3rd bid from VK Powell for $1,086,000 for their base bid. It has included 3 alternates that we've requested. One alternate is to swap out sheet vinyl flooring for the direct flooring in the project as a base bid. One of them is to not convert the gift shop to a temporary blood draw, and the other one is to install a different type of ceiling tile that would be less expensive and not quite have the same specific ratings. So there's an option to save a little bit of money by accepting a couple of those alternates. But our recommendation would be to go with VK Powell.
So was it all of it close, fairly close to each other, or was there?
So the low bid was actually quite a bit lower. It was roughly $200,000. And so, which is obviously a red flag. You look at it and you have 2 bids that are side by side and one that's really a lot lower. You have to take a good look at it. And it did turn out that they had no experience working in the acute care hospital. And so, our assumption is that they don't really understand complexity in the hospital environment. The other 2 bids were within $6,000 of each other.
We have 4 total.
3 total.
So, what is VK Powell's experience in acute care hospitals?
They've, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a long time.
Okay, so they're familiar, obviously, with some of the potential obstacles they'll come across along the way.
They added.
Okay.
When we did the sidewalk, I believe, Bill actually even commented as we were walking through one of the spaces, "Oh, I put this wall in here." I know exactly what's inside that wall.
VK Powell did the MAC also, the metal,
Yeah, okay.
they were the contractor.
Any questions?
Just confirming, both of you are content, satisfied, this is, in a range that we find acceptable and you're supportive of moving forward?
Yeah. I
A little bit of hesitation there.
a couple of factors, that we get estimated.
Mm-hmm.
One of those is just when they estimated it, they didn't have any data to put into theirs on price increases because it was changing so fastly. So they just kind of used the base amount, and so it didn't really vary much from their first estimate. So I think that's a factor there. Prices have gone up. Way out of line. That's not a huge factor. other products.
It's coming down fast, but it's not hitting the retail market yet, right, for the change, so.
You know, and I think there's probably lack of confidence on all of the bidders as to where the prices are gonna be.
Competence or confidence?
Confident.
Okay. As far as some unknowns that they might.
Some unknowns is what they're gonna be paying for their supplies.
Yeah. And do you see, when do you have to choose any of these alternates? Is it, you get to decide as it goes, or have you already thought about these alternate choices, or?
Well, Ken's recommendation, and I concur that we check alternate two, and that's the one for the blood draw, gift shop, and we really have no other good place to go with it, so, even if we rejected or took it, we would still have to find another place for it, we would have costs associated with that. Other two,
So we'd add 9,500 to their bid, based on what you're describing right here?
increased by 95.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, and is there, like, because of the swing in materials, I mean, some things are really changing pretty fast, and other things are basically the bid. Is there a variance that you charge a certain amount above, like, cost and settle down, or we accept this, they accept what we're
Risk,
gonna
they
pay?
either get the
Yeah.
benefit of it coming down or the risk of it going up.
Risk. Yeah, and unless, the contract is delayed for months, you know, then that would be a different story, but if this moves at a normal pace, they would be liable.
And like we talked about, there's not necessarily a lot of lumber in this project per se, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So you look at metals, metal prices.
Yeah, metals gone up too.
Can be. Okay. Anything else, Ron?
When they did the bid, due to the fact of shipping issues and, you know, did they feel that the timeline that we had for the inspection was going to be fairly similar, or were there some changes in that possible timeline? Because there are issues of getting things shipped around. You know, I bought a new dishwasher for my house, and it took a month and a half for it to be shipped to me. So I was just thinking about with the supplies that we would be getting, are we looking at, because that could add some cost to our project if it gets extended out.
Well, this is an all-inclusive bid. I mean, they have to finish it for this amount if we release the contract or something. Or do they have any outs?
They're changing the scope, so this is the bid that they're going to contract with you. So one thing we did do is, we set up the schedule for the project, so they will start construction for another month. And that allows them to get things ordered so that they have a little bit of play, for some of those long lead time items right now. We did take that into consideration when setting up the schedule. And so far, they've made no indication that that's an.
So they would start in first part of September?
But I want to ask my question one more time because I didn't really hear the answer. So they're bidding 1,086,000 plus 9,000 in minus.
Minus.
Oh, minus. Okay, minus. Okay. So 1,086,000 minus 9,000. They have to do it for that. Is there any? They could come to you 6 months from now and say, "Oh, we're going to have to charge 50,000 more for some reason." Do they have any outs to do that?
Not unless there was a huge delay somewhere.
Not caused by them. I mean, out of their control.
Not caused by them, yeah. Correct. That was a situation at a ambulance garage. Halts because of winter weather, and they were delayed at faults of their own getting the project started. And that happened, so when we delayed that project, that happened to be the time that all this price increase went into effect. So that was a scenario where
they have a legitimate case to come back and say, we've got to add something to this contract.
So the contract will always include things for force majeure, so things that are outside of their control, weather,
Yeah,
pandemics, things like that. So
and the goal would be to have this done by the end of the year, if they stay on track, is that?
February. I would just point out that we delayed the schedule as well because the casework vendor that we've chosen, we must place the order for the casework, and they're so far behind securing their raw materials that it would delay our project.
So this has shifted just a little bit, because as I recall, when we originally talked about it, we were looking at finishing by the end of the year, so everything's just shifted a little bit with the order case and getting this bid taken care of and so forth. And the total amount for this project now, because there was this part and there's other parts that we're paying in-house. What's the total amount now for this project add up to approximately, reasonably approximately?
With all,
We're at $2,664,692. Basically, if we accept this bid, we're adding like $225,000 to that. And that takes into account contingency on that amount.
So we should be able to bring in under $3 million out the door. Completed ideally sometime in February if there's no surprises or whatnot. Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
So Bob, this is
So-
Rhonda. I have a question if I could. Are you approving this with all three alternates, or are you approving it without the alternates?
Good question. I mean, I'm assuming we're just approving VK Val, right? Val is already.
And I think you're recommending options 1 and 3, which is a deduction of $9,500, which is kind of what I feel like I'm approving as the recommendation here in this letter. Is that accurate?
I would actually
Or-
disagree
Yeah,
with that.
That way. Have us approve the whole amount, you have the flexibility to finalize 1, 2, or 3.
Say it again, Rhonda?
I would like for us to be able to have the vinyl sheet flooring and also for us to install the tiles for noise reduction. I think that those two items are very important for the environment, for the lab staff, for the amount of time that they spend standing on their feet. It'll reduce the tiring of their legs and have a better work environment for them. I feel like it's very minimal cost to go ahead and include those in the project. We could get by without remodeling the gift shop into a temporary draw station if we were to route the patients down to the MAC for their lab draws, which would be an inconvenience, but it would just be for a short time frame. But I definitely would like to see the board approve us putting in the higher cost rubber flooring and the higher cost ceiling tiles. I just think for the longevity of this product, it's very important for the lab staff.
If I might offer parliamentary advice, I don't think you have a motion on the floor. You have a recommendation, which you could either take a motion to approve the recommendation or take a motion to approve all three alternates, or whatever is the will of the board.
So if we approve the recommendation and don't mention the alternates, then we can, that would dictate that we don't sell out for the lower quality.
I think it depends on what your motion is. I could imagine a board member making a motion saying that we accept the VK Powell bid as is, or that you exercise any of the three alternates to reduce the cost.
You know, I'm concerned about what Rhonda was saying. I support her. I would like this to see the higher quality flooring. You know, we're spending an extra $5,000 to make the flooring, better flooring for the employees to stand on, because they stand up all day long. And that investment we're going to have is actually going to be an excellent employee sponsored thing. And then the quietness, we all have had issues in this hospital about trying to keep things quiet. If we have a little bit quiet ceiling, I would think that that would also help some too. In the grand scheme of this project, the extra $9,500 that we would be spending on that is, to me, fairly insignificant. But the benefit we have is going to be significant on that. We're going to show the employees that we're giving them a high quality floor on it. I've seen other projects in the organization discussing the flooring, and you can have really awful flooring to stand on, or you can have a higher quality flooring to stand on. So I personally would want to be able to have that money in this bid so that we could do it. Does that sound all right, Rhonda?
Yes, I would appreciate that. So, I really do agree with what Dr. Martin said. If you approve VK PAL's bid as is, then we have the option to move forward with those being included.
Well, and, the alternate number 2, that's an easy change order too. I mean, so you could add that later on. I don't have any problem either way.
I agree, it's negligible.
If,
I just want to ask Ron, is there any engineering strategy that would say don't use the rubber floor or the lower noise ceiling?
It's a good product, but we did a comparison. And first of all, this was driven more for sound noise. It's going to continue to keep rubber mats on the flooring, so everywhere is different. There was like a 2% difference in sound level rating. And so now you take into consideration 25% of the floor is covered with mats or equipment, and the casework. And so I felt it was not as advantageous. Tile with a 25% increase to be more significant. You have that whole surface area. The floor, you weren't getting the full effect. That was my.
So have we, I know when we did a remodel on the surgery area, we had a little issue with the flooring that we put in there because it was very difficult for the housekeeping to clean it. Is there anything that we have looked at this to make sure that the product that we're looking at, based upon housekeeping and stuff like that, would it actually be okay that we're not buying a product that would make it a little more difficult for us to keep?
That.
Pardon?
The sheet vinyl is, both products are no wax.
Okay.
Is, such a must in that kind of environment.
Yeah, because I remember when the housekeeping wished they would have been involved when the flooring was put in originally, because it caused them a lot of change in their workflow to keep that flooring clean, the way the flooring was set up in there.
But there was challenges actually with the rubber flooring cleaning process that they use, more of a mechanical clean with just a mild detergent.
Right.
And trying to do that in a lab is a challenge. But then we did find some equipment that basically kind of steam clean. Small piece of equipment that housekeeping can use with that. Originally, they were saying, yeah, you thought there was some.
Okay, well, we've looked at all the potential alternatives to it so that we haven't set up an issue for some other department in the hospital to be able to exceed the lab's needs. Okay.
Dr. Martin, do you have any concerns about keeping the rubber clean versus a vinyl version of the floor?
It depends on the surface finish, and I'm guessing that we've done due diligence in making sure that this is a product that we can handle the hygiene. What would my recommendation be in terms of the flooring? I don't know. It seems like $9,500 is a small investment in goodwill. But it sounds like it's a pretty marginal benefit, so I don't know. Wasn't involved in the testing. My inclination would probably be to go with the soccer stuff. But that's, forgive me, a soft recommendation.
This is only 5,000, so 4,500 is worth.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I would move to approve the full $1,086,000 bid from BK Powell and let staff and administration make any final decisions on the flooring and the ceiling based on what you think is best for the employees and cleanliness and anything like that, so.
So, and that number includes the gift shop blood draw.
Yeah, I'm approving the whole thing. I want them to decide from here on out what is best
The option
to
of,
move forward with any of these little decisions that need to be made, just to give them the authority to do anything they think is best.
Yeah,
that's the motion.
yeah.
So, a motion by John to approve the full amount of $1,086,000 with the option of eliminating alternate number 2. Motion by John, second by Erica. Any further discussion?
No, I think that's the best way to go.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed?
Good. Rhonda, thank you for your thoughts. That was very helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you have the need of our employees always on the table. Thank you.
Thanks. I know other hospitals that have used this rubber flooring in their lab have decided they want to use it for all of their flooring in the hospitals moving forward. So it did have a very strong recommendation from other facilities that we looked at.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else, Ron?
Yeah, thanks for your efforts in putting that together and stuff, so, yeah.
Okay, item C, operations, Chief Nursing Officer, Vicki.
So, I don't have anything further to add. My report's on page 17. Kind of just reiterated, Sandy was talking about our state's inspection survey and some other updates in the other departments. So I'll take any questions if you have any, or any comments. Is there a full first data for the the 20, got it right, it is the 25th, and as soon as we get a sign from Jim, which should be anytime, or Andy or my team will be reaching out to you guys to see if you're available.
Vicki, on the 3 surgical rooms,
Yes.
how'd that go?
So we've had an opportunity to do 3 OR rooms simultaneously, and it actually was better than Amy thought. We ran into a glitch with Central Sterile because they have to reprocess a lot of these. So we found out that if we continue to do rooms, on a constant basis, we would probably have to get more staff in that department. And also housekeeping, because they're coming between each case. And usually if you run 2 rooms, you can shove a case into the middle room, clean the first room, so there's always a room ready. So if they're all in use, there's that lag time in between and getting that room ready for the next case. What does that take to turn a room over?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Seems like there's a lot that.
Yeah, it's a terminal cleaning between each case. I'm sure, I don't know.
Dr. O'Brien?
Yeah, it seems like about 30 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah, I was
It
thinking
varies somewhat depending
on the case that was,
on cases, because if it's a total joint,
yeah, then it's a total different process.
it's a bigger process.
I know that Amy has watched those numbers pretty closely, and tracked them. Yeah.
So do we just do the 3 ORs for 1 week as an
We did it for
experiment?
1 week because we had enough cases that week to do that, and it's kind of we had 3 anesthesiologists or the CRNAs were available. So, it wasn't even for 5 days, I think it was 4 days.
you see us doing it again at some point?
I do at some point. Right now, Amy and I had that talk today, and she just says that there's not enough volume to do that. It may be, and the summertime's kind of variable because there's people gone and out of town. So we'll probably look at that a little closer in the fall when things settle back in.
But we are seeing more general surgery volume.
Yes.
And as we ramp up vascular, I think that 3 rooms is going to become, if not the norm, at the very least common.
Mhm. Great, thanks, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Katie?
Okay.
Appreciate it. Rhonda, Chief Ancillary Officer.
Yes, my report is on page 18, and I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to take questions.
Rhonda, what will it look like once vaccination is moved into the clinics? Will that be, which manufacturer will we be seeing in the clinic? Could it be either Moderna or Pfizer, now that Pfizer's a little more?
Or even
It'll
Johnson
be-
and Johnson. Pfizer would be in peds in the pediatric clinic, but Carrie is actually really spearheading that in the clinic, so she has more detail for you.
How does that look as far as prepping a certain amount of doses and their shelf life and
Yes,
trying
that's
to?
some of the things that we talked about today, because as we know, in volunteering at the COVID vaccine clinic, there's a lot that goes into that. So, and we chatted about it at the PEDS meeting this morning, bright and early this morning as well. We do know, and I'm going to have you repeat how you framed this, because I said we are going to have to be okay with waste, wasting vaccine, and that's not going to feel good globally. However, Dr.
So-
Bauer framed it.
Yeah, so early in the pandemic, the limited resource was vaccine. And it was devastating to think that we might waste a dose, and we went months without losing a dose. But that's no longer the resource that's in short supply. The resource that's in short supply is willing shoulders. And we can't let one of those go to waste. If
Thank you.
off opening a vial, yeah. And that's the guidance from CDC and from the state, is if you've got somebody that wants a vaccine, it's worth the vial to give them one dose.
So we have currently Moderna and Pfizer, and those will be available in all of the clinics. We will focus Pfizer specifically at PEDS, but, because it allows for that age. And then we currently don't have J&J in inventory, so we're not having to worry about that as a third option. We just have to.
Will that be part of the zooming or the process of manufacturing that they would like?
It's like you've been at every one of my meetings today. Yes. That's exactly what we talked about, with having this part of our rooming criteria and part of vitals. You take that information and you say, may I get you a vaccine today, a COVID vaccine today? And then they can indicate whether, oh, no, I've already gotten mine, here's why I got it, or, oh, okay, well, no, and if they decline, then we discuss where we would document that so the physician or provider would see that information and could then address it. We also at Clinic Council had our specialty clinics that won't be offering the vaccine show interest in having the handouts available for these discussions, so they can provide the educational information to the patients as well. So again, that we're really trying to hit them from all angles with the right handouts and the right information.
I'm eager to learn how much convenience is a factor, and if just the opportunity is there, okay, let's do it. If how many people will be willing just because it's a convenience.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
Yeah, our county is doing quite poorly,
I know.
getting shots in our.
Okay, no pressure. All right, I hear you guys.
Do we have vaccines on hand that are gonna expire out prior to getting them into arms?
Yes, and I think, Rhonda, you may have more of that information, but I think, there was, Anna and Master have been kind of working on a swap with other facilities that you can take these, since you'll use them before we will, and we'll swap for a different expiration date. So, Rhonda, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't. I know they were looking at that. I don't know if they've had any takers on that offer.
But it's, there's more vaccine than we have takers probably, county in the period of time before they're gonna.
And is this being organized through the state's coordinated or hospital coordinated?
Some of both. I know one of the people, they were working with someone in Yakima, but the state does have like boards, like.
Yeah, they're trying to create essentially depots, recognizing that the pockets of demand are going to be less than shipment. So the idea is that you would have some regional site where you would depot the vaccine and distribute, be able to return doses. There's been a lot of phone calls that have been, mine's going to expire in 2 weeks. How about yours? You think you can use it in the next 2 weeks? Great, we'll send it.
Any of those expiration dates being extended now that they've had more time to study the vaccine?
There was some talk about that when we had the 6-week delay on J&J. I haven't heard any more about extending expirations.
I think the storage.
The Pfizer is no longer ultra cold.
Cold anymore?
Yeah, it's conventional freezer, not ultra cold.
Okay. So, and then you were talking about even if one person wants a shot, you give it to them. So how many doses in that vial are not being used? Worst case scenario, if just one dose comes out of that vial.
Yeah, if it's Pfizer, 10 or 11. Okay. Yeah, if it's Moderna, 5 or 6.
And in the MAC facility, the Medical Arts Center, we can definitely communicate between floors of, hey, we have this, we popped a vial, and who needs it, or if you
Try
have
to
it.
maximize any
Yeah, so
opportunity.
we can try that.
You could use Centurion for that.
Dr. Martin, the Moderna vials have 7 mils in it, that's 14 doses. So if you give one jab out of a vial of Moderna, you're gonna lose close to 13 doses.
I thought Moderna had been labeled originally at 5.
Yeah, well, they made their vials, unfortunately, they made their vials bigger.
That's logical.
And so it's, because I've seen more vials, more doses being wasted out in the community now, in the pharmacies, due to the fact that there's 7 mils in it than there were before. And, in the Johnson & Johnson one, there's only 5 doses in the vial, so.
So they've decreased and Moderna's increased.
Yeah.
It's actually Pfizer that has 5 to 7 doses.
Right.
Yeah.
And they increased it started out where you get 5 doses out of it. And then they actually saw you could get up to 7, so they increased it on the label to 6. Moderna was 10, and then now on the label it's 11, but you sometimes can get 12.
Yeah, the state labels, when they send those out, they only label it at 11, but the overfill is in there, so you can actually get close to 14 doses out of it.
Also depending on the needle and the syringe you're using. Some of the longer needles, you cannot get as many doses.
Sure, yeah, because there's a little, there's a little bit of left in the needle. But anyway, I was kind of disappointed that Moderna increased their vial size. Now, I wish it would have been bigger, and now since it's slowing down a little bit, it'd be nice if it was a little smaller, so that when you thaw out a vial, that you only do 1 or 2 jabs out of it, and you're not wasting a lot of it.
I heard that the Moderna is pursuing those single dose.
Single dose. The timeline I've heard is fall for single dose vials.
Yeah, well, it's only 12 hours once it's thawed. It's been poked, so.
My next question is, once you open a vial, you have X number of hours to use it before
Right.
it has to be disposed of?
Right, yeah. And then we've all paid for those vials, so when there was a dose being being wasted, it's coming out of our taxpayers' money. So,
But I like the idea of, it's not wasting, it served its purpose because we gave at least one dose.
right, yeah.
We didn't miss the opportunity.
It's just sad because you can't give more to find viable arms, and, you know.
I think so, there's thousands of doses that are expired.
Yeah.
That's sitting there too, so.
Well, we're branching out to the politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Rhonda?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll go to Chief of Clinic Operations, Carrie.
Hello. So my report starts on 18 and goes into 19. I did mention the COVID vaccine in the clinic, but just a little blurb. So I'm glad we're able to chat about that a little bit further. One addition to my report, and I'm going to steal some of your thunder, Scott.
No problem.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So we did receive notification today that we were awarded the grant for the rural health clinic COVID vaccine confidence grant. So it was $148,000
Some change.
and some change. $48,000, and this grant goes to raising confidence or decreasing hesitancy and just being able to do some fun things. Michelle and I and Mitchell Rose will be meeting and talking about what that could look like. So.
So the grant is just for essentially publicity, just getting word out and figuring out how to get people in, getting.
And it doesn't have to be used just specifically for the COVID vaccine. It could be for any vaccine, quite honestly. And so I know definitely we need to get Dr. Malspeskel involved with this. That's his passion and his expertise as well. So,
Will there be flu vaccines in the near future for this upcoming year, or?
for administration, yes, to be able to, yes, we will have vaccine.
One of the products that is in development by Moderna is a combination flu COVID vaccine. One shot, both viruses.
Good time.
Do you want to talk about POP? POP, the governor's initiative, power providers.
I don't think.
So the governor's office Friday morning announced the Power Providers Initiative, which is based around the idea that we're going to be doing more vaccinating in clinics and really trying to support primary care in getting that word out. And so they've included some scripting, like the acronym SAVE, seek your patient's vaccination status, ask or educate if they aren't vaccinated, try to understand why, vaccinate if they agree, and empower the patients to share their vaccination status with their friends. It's interesting because all last week there was this big fanfare about there's going to be this big announcement at 7:30 Friday morning, and I completely spaced the call. And I am increasingly convinced that everybody in the state, possibly including the governor, spaced the call. But DOH has got information on their website, and but some of the scripting that Carrie was referring to, we can lift, steal, use.
And then the tour, was this provided from the Student Health Center?
Oh, yes, yeah. So we had Sean Marie, who is the nurse practitioner at Student Health at CWU. She just really wanted to look at our COVID processes. She learned a lot about them. They're gearing up for students coming back, and I think just a little nervous, but wanted to make sure that they were kind of aligned with what we were doing. And so we did the tour, and then that led into so many other really great discussions. So we're hoping for, particularly during when we were in our women's health clinics, just how the partnership that could happen there.
The collaboration.
Yeah, they had no idea that we do colposcopes, and they had no idea, so there were things that they could be referring their patients to here, as well as just even calling up for a consultation of, hey, what do I do in a case like this? So I just really love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So part of this room is still the COVID clinic during the mornings, or?
Yes, that half.
And is there a time frame, is it ongoing until further notice, or is there?
So the August 6th will be the last COVID clinic here, and then on August 9th, that Monday, we'll shift over to the clinic. And so there will be a small handful of folks who have received their first dose here upstairs, and then we'll capture those folks in the clinic or try to get them scheduled to with their primary care physician. Or
The only other question I have is on the dashboard. We have some further available points going pretty high.
Up. Yes, thank you for noticing. I was hoping that you would note that. So those are for derm, and that is something that we noted this last time and took notes of the trend. We do have Dr. Oldenkamp, who is getting credentialed for Cleellum. She actually lives up there. She would love to provide service up there. She knows that that's going to help release some of this pressure. In the meanwhile, we were a little cramped for space. Quality, as you know, has moved out. We have finished up that space over on that side, or close to, and we'll be able to see patients over there. And that will allow for us, her to have some extra days, which she is willing to do. Before I got here, I was just chatting with Dr. Hibbs, and Dr. Martin and I have also chatted about increasing her FTE. She's, a day every other week would take care of this. So a lot of follow-up. Yeah. That's our plan.
Great. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Medical staff, Chief of Staff, Dr. Brian.
Okay, as far as the recommendation for prevention and privileging, go through the list there. I don't know what you're seeing on your electronic list, but the residents are really specific Northwest residents, not PHC area residents. So I look through there's 2 students there, and new health professional at the ED is Dustin Herder, who was working in the Yakima previously. Christopher Petty is not an UNRAD provider.
Nope.
He's a general surgeon. And Christian Ingley is a UNRAD. And so is Jose Ostina. Michael Mercurio is a VM telescope. And Ryan R., of course, is our workplace help, PA, and William Phillips is a family as well as there are no issues at all in on we recommend their request for initial appointments, reappointments, and privileging to be granted aid.
Great, thank you. Resolution?
That's the slate of credentials, and they've got with corrections, kind of urgent.
Motion by Erica, second by Terry. Approve the credentials. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
No opposed.
No, goodbye.
Dr. Martin.
You have my report. There's one thing that I want to call out and a couple things I'd like to add. First, Dr. Herman has announced her retirement at the end of this year. She has been a stalwart in this community for decades and will be sorely missed by her patients and by this medical staff. As I said, we're looking for somebody to fill the vacancy, but we have no hope of replacing her. And then I took the liberty of using my report to update the board on the current state of COVID, largely from a cautionary standpoint, because we all desperately want to believe through it. The tables that I included actually perfectly captured the nadir of the case rates. So the case rate that I show of 67.3 cases per 100,000 statewide is now 92.
You're saying just this report? printed a few days ago or whatever.
Yep, and the case rate in the county that was 54 is now 72.
Still, both of those still have an upward trajectory, that's not necessarily peak either.
Correct. In fact, if you were to take that state curve and flip it, the trajectory we're seeing right now is an almost perfect mirror of what I depict. Nationally, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen case rates increase by over 300%. We're seeing increases in hospitalizations. There's been some decompression just during the course of the day today. Last evening, there were 5 Eastern Washington counties that were reporting full ICUs. As of right now, there are none. What has changed, and is proof that the vaccines work, is that Dr. Hibbs did an analysis looking at publicly available numbers. And in the period from January to April, of the people who died of COVID, 0.1% had been vaccinated. Of the people who died of COVID, 99.9% had not been vaccinated. So the vaccines, even if you get sick, they save lives. But we forget how sick people get, and that's why we're seeing some of the hospitalization numbers that we've seen. When I wrote this report, most of the hospitalizations we were seeing statewide are non-COVID. That trend is changing. The other update is that as of this morning, the best estimate for Delta variant, there's a huge uptick in Tri-Cities, and it's thought that the vast majority of those cases are Delta. In Region 10, CDC Region 10, which is Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, as of today, it's estimated that about 70% of new cases are Delta. A week ago, it was about 30%. So, we are still well below the peak numbers that we saw. We know we can do this. We've done it as a hospital. We've done it as a state. I just want to make sure that we all understand that we've got to keep doing it. We'll get there, but we ain't there yet.
You feel pretty comfortable that the increase in infections in our county is around 70%, is in Delta also?
So we're sequencing more than most states, but we're only sequencing cases that are called out by clinicians or cases that were in people who were vaccinated or in people who had previously had COVID. Those are automatically getting sequenced. Because of that, we're probably overestimating the prevalence of Delta to some extent. That said, if I look at what's getting sequenced in all of the surrounding counties, trying to imagine that what we're not seeing Delta here is not realistic.
We currently have patients in our hospital.
One, and there were a few days last week when we had none. But 1 to 4 seems to be about the range that we've been living in. Where my bigger concern is a lot of the tertiary care centers that we use for referrals aren't able to accommodate. READY, Regional Emergency and Disaster Preparedness Network in Eastern Washington, Tuesday evening issued a report that indicated that they're seeing increasing difficulty moving patients to higher levels of care. Hospitals in Spokane and Yakima and Tri-Cities aren't able to accept referrals, and critical access hospitals aren't able to move referrals. As I mentioned in my report, and it hasn't happened since I wrote the report, but we have taken referrals from other critical access hospitals because they didn't have the capacity and couldn't move the patient to a higher level of care. They were specifically not COVID referrals. It was things like ortho and general surgery. but they didn't have the nursing capacity for post-op care, and so send a patient here.
Of the COVID admissions that we have at our facility here, are most of them county residents, or do we actually have somebody that comes to our county and then ends up becoming sick and coming in that too?
You know, if somebody got sick here, we'd admit them here. I'm not aware that we've had any out-of-county admissions. It's kind of like delivering babies. Once in a while, we get somebody that goes into labor at exit 106, but for the most part, it's county residents.
Last fall, we accepted two from Yakima for, they couldn't, take care of care.
But-
Otherwise, they've been local residents.
Yeah, well, I know, historically, when we were, that we were the big recreational area here before the COVID kind of shut things down. People would come to our county to play, and then they would get sick somehow and come to our hospital. That's why I was wondering whether we were having some COVID cases that would be brought, they came here to play, and then end up being admitted because they got sick.
And that's a very reasonable scenario. I don't know that it's happened. It's a pretty small time window that you'd be looking at. It would be the person who got exposed, came here to go fly fishing, felt good enough to get out on the river, and then crumped. And usually people who get sick with COVID, the worst is about day 10. So about day 6, they kind of lose interest in going outside and playing around.
Right.
It's not inconceivable. Certainly we'll take care of anybody that shows up and needs care. But I don't think we've been significantly impacted.
So the process of the disease tends to keep people closer to where they live as opposed to moving around with it. Okay.
Yeah, and even before COVID, most people got sick, rushed back to their home if they could.
Right.
So it was only really acute.
Unless they're at watershed.
Yeah, well, I find that nice information, because I know there's members in our community that are blaming other communities for our COVID breakout, and I don't really think that is a real thing that's going on.
No. The other thing that I pointed out in my report, and that hasn't changed since I wrote that report, is the percentage of people in the county who are vaccinated is pretty much exactly what it was a week ago. If anybody wants a little button so people ask them about their vaccination, I've got a couple extras.
I'd take one.
Yeah, I guess.
Mic drop.
I just chased it out of it. I'm sorry.
All right, Bill Landon.
Chief Financial Officer.
Well, I'm not sure Vicki really emphasized how busy her department have been, but they've been busy, and it's reflected in the numbers that I'm reporting. On page 28 is the stats, and on line 2, a nice positive variance for patient days, which of 21%, down with surgery cases, minutes and cases. On inpatient cases, a positive variance of 19, almost 20%, outpatient almost 31%. GI cases, almost 17. ER has been very busy. Urgent care, we're seeing visitors, and a lot of the visitors from out of town are up in urgent care getting care. And lab and radiology and the rehab continue to be busy. The clinics not as busy as they have been, but continue to be busy. No. And so we broke $17 million in gross revenue for the second month in a row. We didn't set a revenue record this month, but this is the first month that we haven't broken a record in about 3 months. So just another very, very good financial report. On page 30, you see that positive inpatient variance of $715,000, outpatient $1,060,000, professional fee carries area another almost $380,000. In the contractual area, we continue to have strong receipts, and in the contractuals, we increased our contractual and set up an additional payable by $800,000 for cost report payable. So we've got a $1.8 million cost report payable in accrued for in these numbers here. Other than operating revenue, the negative variance is essentially just due to timing for the most part. 340B revenue is not quite as strong as it has been. It's some of the behavior of the drug manufacturers are not allowing us to use some of their product and get the 340B benefit as they have, but we're still doing well there. Expenses were over budget by $307,000, but in nearly all the cases they were volume related. You see that the supplies and the purchase services exceeded budget, and the temporary labor was specifically related to excess staffing in ER and ICU and med surg, and I think maybe even surgery too. And so we, with that, we ended up with a positive operating income for the month of $1,038,000. And down in non-operating revenue, we received $300,000 of COVID-related funds to provide a COVID vaccine, and $100,000 for each of Cary's rural health clinics. And so that was we received that $300,000. We recognized $1.1 million of some of that deferred CARES money that we had on our. We've received the cash and we recognized the income, and so that is what contributed to that large non-operating income gain. So a net income for the month was $2.3 million. Year to date, we're looking at almost 7.7, positive variance of about 5.9. Jason and I have been digging into some of the expenses related to CARES, and in talking with Vicki and Michelle and some of the other managers, I'm feeling more and more confident that we have significant CARES-related expenses that we're going to be able to document. And we know we've got a significant revenue shortfall, but as we've started to dig in, I feel confident that we're going to be able to keep these CARES dollars that we've recognized. It'll be a long process before that's confirmed, but we have to report out by end of September. And Jason, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, nothing. Sounds good.
Jason filed our 2020 cost report. We had a receivable on that report of about $1 million, and the actual report, we had booked that with DZA, and the actual report came in right about where we had that receivable. So that money was, or that income was appropriately reflected. If you back up to page 29 on some of the financial dashboard, the days in accounts receivable came down 3 days. Overall AR came down some also, which drove that. And then our days cash on hand increased by 11.5 days. And so just a very financial report for the month, and the trend is continuing for the month of July. Maybe not quite as strong as this, but still well in excess of our budget. Questions about?
On supplies on page 30, supply costs, we're seeing more patients, doing more procedures, the cost will go up, but are we seeing an inflationary impact on it?
One of the things that there's inflation in there. There's also just year over year, when we looked back at 2020 and the 9 months where we had inflation, we probably had increased PPE supply utilization of about $1 million, almost $1 million, these are not billable supplies. These are just supplies that we use to keep our patients and staff safe. And so we're the same COVID protocols that we were seeing in 2020 are occurring right now. Nothing has changed, and Morgan and her team are still work diligently to get supplies, and we have we're well stocked with PPE and other equipment that we need to care for patients and keep our staff safe.
Okay.
Anything else?
So, like you know, there's a little bit of maybe slower in July and possibly in August also. Is that often related to people taking their vacation and so forth, and providers not being available during that chunk of time?
It's vacations. It's vacations.
So the patient demand hasn't gone away, it's just...
I think patients take vacations too.
Yeah.
And so it's, we don't have as many people trying to schedule things either. So it's some of both. We, as I noted in the report, there's, Carrie had said that we've received notification today on that $148,000 grant. We've received $250,000 for energy efficiency improvements, and then those. So that cash is in the bank. The 148 is not yet, but we still have those other Department of Commerce energy efficiency $500,000 that is not recognized. That legislative grant they received for the lab expansion that is not recognized. So there's a number of other sources of income that are on the balance sheet but are not in the P&L yet. And then if other questions about the financial report, then we do have a piece of capital equipment that the finance committee talked about. Our pulmonary function testing equipment is it's normally has a life of about 8 years. Our equipment that we have on hand is purchased in 2005. It does not interface with Cerner. The staff do a whole lot of manual workarounds to get the data into Cerner, and but the equipment itself and the pulmonary PFT booth is the whole thing is just old and it's in need of being replaced. So this is just a routine replacement of an asset that is well beyond its useful life. This is Rhonda's area. Do you have anything to add, Rhonda?
It does also come with training for staff. We do have staff that don't know how to perform a pulmonary function test, and in order to so this will save us from having to do that because it's included in the new equipment.
This has approximately a 10-year lifespan?
8 to 10 years.
I think it's important to replace it, and it just happens to be a benefit of it is going to interface with Cerner. So that way it's going to reduce the workload on the staff trying to get the data in there. So I think that sometimes these pieces of equipment grow old at the right time to be replaced. So I think this would be a really good pivot. I think Jim is a very cost-effective manager in this organization, and having him submit this, I would totally back it.
And it's not just getting data in, it's getting data out when you're seeing a patient.
Right, yeah.
So currently, if you want to look at, for PFTs, if you want to look at the volume moves, PDF, you have to open, scroll, it's a different module than what you're usually in as opposed to results. It's in documents. So you'd click over to what the trainers call the dark side menu, where you try not to click ever. And you click on documentation, you go in and you try to find the right report and pull it up, as opposed to just clicking on reports and PFTs and seeing what you need.
And we're trading in, keeping this one for, the old one for backup.
I think it will go. It will, I don't believe it. There may be a little trade-in value. I don't see it.
I think the trade-in value is probably by the pound.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it will operate on any other Windows system. So I think that was a piece of the upgrade.
And Rhonda, approximately how many people would end up getting trained on this as part of the purchase? Any idea?
Well, all of them will, all of our staff will. There's only a couple of people that know how to do PFTs currently. They'll all have to learn the new equipment, but I think we'll probably have about 4 more that will get trained in addition to the ones that already know how to do the test.
Yeah, and it's great to keep the providers out of the dark side.
Unfortunately, it seems that, pulmonary function testing and it's going to increase with in the wake of COVID.
That almost looks like a motion.
Oh, no.
Second.
All right.
Motion by Erickson, second by John, to approve capital expenditure of pulmonary functional equipment with center interface. All in favor, say aye.
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 No opposed?
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Michelle, Chief Public Relations Officer.
Hey, everybody. Sorry for the lack of the report. I just returned on Monday. So I was going to let you know about the barbecue, getting caught up. It'll be nice to have Catherine, come back into our world once they can set up in the clinic. Starting to anticipate by kind of mid-August, we're going. So I'm dating, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
How's it jumping out of an airplane?
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
Cannot look happier. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Recommend it.
Good.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the grace. We'll give you the extended report next month at your use.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have no education or board reports. Any old business we need to discuss? I don't see any new business.
No executive session.
No executive session. So.
Record.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, if there's nothing else.
Wow.
No.
Put your arms down.
Don't do that. Meeting is adjourned.
Dr. Martin, thank you.